Dulmison Marine of Sydney, Australia is proud to introduce the Flook, a revolutionary flying safety anchor. When launched into the water, this anchor actually flies away from the craft to the required anchoring position. No need to know the depth of water or to calculate the length of line to play out. The Flook anchor automatically descends on a 5-to-1 angle, carrying out the required length of line before settling on the seabed. Developed from an early Scandinavian concept by Philip Dulhunty, a veteran seaplane pilot in Australia, the Flook has been given improved hydrodynamics for flying underwater. The gliding control of aircraft is maintained through a delta wing design, which is recreated here in the Flook anchor. The Flook was originally developed for use with seaplanes. Design requirements called for an efficient anchor of minimum weight for carrying on board, as well as ease in handling and deployment. After launching, which is especially easy, a unique pantograph opens with a jerk on the line. Special geometry digs the flukes into the seabed. Like the Bruce anchor, the harder you pull, the deeper the anchor digs in. All types of yachts and runabouts can benefit, especially for deploying a stern anchor. And fishermen and divers wanting to anchor directly over a reef or a wreck can take their boat to the ideal final position, sending the Flook out away to hold them exactly where they want to be. The Flook evolved as a sort of metal manta ray. When drifting with engine trouble or broken mast towards rocks or reef, the anchor may be thrown out to deeper water to kedge the craft to safety. The ground holding power of the Flook will even allow you to pull your vessel off a sandbar if you've run aground. Modern polyester ropes are very strong, allowing a relatively light anchor line to be used. A flat braided webbing conveniently supplied on a reel also serves well as an anchor rode. Holding tests with a dynamometer were conducted in different types of sand using a four-wheel drive vehicle connected to a 5-kilo Flook. The result averaged over 1,800 newtons. The larger 10-kilo anchor gave her a result easily exceeding 3,000 newtons, enough to hold a 50-footer. Comparative tests showed that the 5-kilo Flook held twice the load of an 8-kilo plough and a 9-kilo dreadnought, and had more than 50% greater holding power than an equivalent Danforth type. The recent introduction of the Ben Lexon-designed Eureka yacht adds further testimony to the success of the Flook anchor. The radical design of the Eureka is innovative in both construction and fitting out. A continual leader in competition, the Eureka carries as standard equipment the Flook anchor, recognized as a breakthrough when compared to conventional forms of anchoring. And with chain no longer required, anchoring and stowage is simplified. Replacing chain as a shock-absorbing spring to take the impact out of wave and wind gusts, simply send the roadrunner, a ball weight, down the anchor line. A wire trace prevents chafing in coral or sharp rocks. The unique features of the Flook flying anchor carry it beyond the reach of conventional anchors. The Flook, a revolutionary new concept, adding safety to anchoring.
Welcome back. We've seen quite a few anchor innovations on the show recently, and in each case I've said that in the case of these inventions, necessity has been the mother of the invention. People have perceived a need, or they've experienced a need, they've applied their ingenuity to solving it and come up with an article which is useful for everybody. Now, the forces that governed the next invention I'm going to show you were unusual. Phil Dulhunty is an old flying buddy of mine. Phil operates Dulmison Industries at Wyong. It's a huge factory near the river at Wyong. Now, he lives at Pittwater, and he discovered that the best way to commute from Pittwater to Wyong was by air using a float plane. So he bought a float plane and went through the learning process, did all that, and found that it was a superb, very rapid, very economical way to get backwards and forwards. Having owned a float plane and using it on a daily basis, he became involved, he became active in the Float Plane Association. He goes away on tours and does all kinds of things. Now, as we've seen before on World of Boats, float planes are magnificent aircraft, but they tend to have the disadvantage of being cumbersome on the water. They can't back up, they're fairly fragile, so you can't afford to bump anything with them. And they're not very tractable on the water. Now, Phil experienced the problems that were associated with that fairly often in his float plane operations, and he got to thinking that if he had an anchor that would fly the way the float plane does, away from the aircraft once he'd landed and she was stationary on the water, he'd overcome all of the problems associated with having to drop the anchor and then wait for the float plane to be blown back or for the tide to carry it back on the anchor line. So he set about applying aerodynamic and hydrodynamic principles to the design of an anchor which not only would hold well once it was on the bottom, but which would actually move away, flying through the water, away from the float plane or, of course, from the boat. Now, the anchor he came up with, he's called the Flook. F-L-O-O-K, pronounced Flook, as in look. There it is there. It's quite an attractive piece of gear. It looks like a jet fighter just sitting there. In its flying configuration, when you throw it overboard, it stays like that. The minute it hits the bottom, that pantograph opens and these two swallowtails dig into the bottom and pull it into the sand. Now, as you can see, the flukes, or the blades, have quite a large area, so once that's settled in the sand, they're very, very difficult to dislodge. Now, without further ado, I'm going to show you how the Flook works. Now, you just hold it level. The dihedral there on the two flukes keeps it upright as it glides through the water. Hold it closed and simply launch it like that. Now, as you can see, as soon as the Flook hits the water, the area of the wings and the balance of it, which is created by the large lump of lead on the nose, causes it to stabilise in the water, and it glides away from the boat at an angle of 5 to 1. Now, that means that if you're in 20 feet of water, the anchor will end up 100 feet away from the boat when you drop it over. Now, you may ask what applications there are for that type of anchor. I'll show you. Now, imagine that you've found yourself an excellent fishing reef or bommy, and you want to anchor right over the top of it. Now, if you have a conventional anchor, you have to run up past it quite a long distance, depending on the depth of water, drop your anchor, and then lay back on the anchor line and hope that the drift is going to take you back over the bommy. With a Flook, I'll show you what you do. Firstly, you have 3 of them. You put one out this side, conventional way, just launch it out that side of the boat, at about 45 degrees to the centre line of the boat. You put a second one over the other side of the transom, again at about 45 degrees to the centre line of the boat, and you put one over the bow. Now, if, say, you're in 100 feet of water, you'll end up with about 1,000 feet between those anchors, which is a tremendous amount of span on your anchor line to keep the boat steady and keep her moored. And you can do all that with the boat directly over the point over which you want to stop. Now, that's ideal for salvage, for diving operations, for fishing operations. Imagine another application. Imagine you've run aground, or the tide has left the bow of your boat stranded, on a sandbar. Under normal circumstances with a fairly large boat, you would have to row your anchor out with your dinghy, drop it, and then come back onto the boat and either pull or winch the boat off. With this, you simply stand on the bow of the boat or the stern of the boat, throw the anchor over and pull the boat off, so it helps with kedging. Now I'll just haul this one back in and show you a couple of other details about it. I'll tell you what, we're over sand here in fairly shallow water, and that certainly did grab. Its holding power is marvellous. In fact, one of the boating magazines just conducted a series of tests on all of the anchors available on the Australian market, and they came to the conclusion that the Flook fulfills its design goals to a higher degree than any other anchor on the Australian market. Now that's high praise indeed when you consider that it's in competition. I'm almost pulling Australia into the boat here. It's in full competition with a whole lot of other anchors. There's an idea, by the way, of the amount of sand that it grabs, and a fair bit of it has fallen off. So once that pantograph opens, the anchor really settles itself down into the bottom. Now, I'm sure the purists will ask, what about the length of chain that's considered to be mandatory on all anchor roads? Well, because the Flook is at such a distance away from the boat, and because it grabs so hard, under most circumstances the chain isn't necessary. However, if you're anchored in a seaway and there's a fair sort of a swell on, you need a shock absorber. And Dulmison Marine also offer what they call a road runner, which is a lead weight that you you just clip over the anchor line, and it runs down the anchor line, lays on the bottom forward of the anchor, and acts as a weight to take up that the shock of the boat going up and down on the waves. Now there are two sizes. They're just down here. There's a 5 kilo and a 10 kilo, and those two sizes will handle the job for pretty well any size of boat. So there's a good range there. They've thought of pretty well everybody. The little one obviously for boats up to say 30 feet, and the larger one for boats up to maybe 60 feet. Now you'll notice that just behind the weight on the nose of the anchor there's a hole. That's designed so that if you're anchoring in extremely soft ground, if you're going to be there for a long time, and if there's a big sea or wind running, you shackle a lighter line into there and let it run up with the normal anchor road, so that if the anchor does dig itself all the way in and get stuck, you can run forward over the top of the anchor, pick up this lighter line and pull the Flook out of the bottom in the opposite direction to what it went in. So Dulmisons have really thought of everything. Now Dulmison Marine have also thought about the reef fishermen with this folding pick anchor. As you can see, it stays absolutely flat. The flukes are level there, but if you just turn it up and do that, the top flukes slide down the shaft there and give you a standard reef pick. So that's very handy for people who have confined space in their boats and need that extra stowage space. Now, it's an excellent exercise. Dulmisons are marketing very aggressively and very efficiently right around Australia, and also looking at the export market to New Zealand, so they're generating export dollars for Australia with these anchors. Now, I guess you could call it a gadget, but it's a gadget which was designed to fulfil a specific need, a need which is pretty well universal as far as baities are concerned, and as we've seen, and as other people have ascertained by intensive tests, it fulfills that need absolutely superbly. It's generating export dollars for Australia, it's generating employment for Australia, and it really is a marvellous addition to the range of Australian designed and made boating accessories. We'll be back right after this.